A good moed. Welcome to all those that are joining with us for the Likutei Halacha Shir. We're in the middle of Hilchas Netilas Yadayim Halacha Vav. However, we're going to skip to paragraph Tzadik Tes in order to focus on Sukkos. The last part of this halacha gives us a beautiful insight regarding Sukkos. So we'll learn that hopefully for the next few days, Mitzvah Shem. Today is an important yahrzeit in Breslov. It's the yahrzeit of Rabbi Yitzchak Gelbach, Zichron Avracha, a Yerei Shamayim, a Talmid Chacham, exceptional in his Tmimus, and he married a descendant of Rabbeinu Zal, so that his children and grandchildren are descendants of Rabbeinu Zal. It's a famous family in Yerushalayim, the Gelbach family, which lives in my area. The oldest son is Reb Eliezer Gelbach, who I know from when I first came to Breslov 47 years ago. Very special person, special children. Our youngest daughter, Tzipi, married into the family. That's one yahrzeit today. And also it's the yahrzeit of my cousin, David Nasan, Reb Avram God, who passed away at a young age. I had an aunt and uncle who lived in Eretz Yisrael, who were Holocaust survivors. And unfortunately, they lost both of their sons, two sons. All of their children passed away during their lifetime at a young age. And they actually founded a shul in memory of these two sons. This shul is in Yerushalayim, in the Itri neighborhood, and it's known as the Maimon shul, in memory of these two young boys that passed away. We dedicate the shir also for a complete refuah shalema for all those that need it. Once again, this halacha in Likutei Halachos is based on chapter 7 in the second half of Likutei Moharan, paragraph Tzadik Tes. V'hinei kol inyan Rosh Hashanah, v'Yom Kippur, v'Sukkos, v'Arba Minim, kvar mavur harbe mizeh al pi haTorah hanal ki merachmim yanagim. Rab Nasan Zal says that regarding this holiday period, from Rosh Hashanah through Sukkos, I've already explained a lot about these holidays based on this chapter in Likutei Moharan, chapter 7, B'halachos hakoidmin, in halachas that were written prior to this halacha that we're learning now. Behilchas Sukkah, halacha Daled, Behilchas Nedorim, halacha Daled, paragraph Ches, Ubehilchas Cheskas Metaltalin, halacha Gimel, ois Ches. Remember that the halachos, the numbering of the halachos, corresponded to different passes around the Shulchan Aruch that Rav Nasan Zal made. So we are in halacha Vav, which means this was a sixth pass of the Shulchan Aruch that Rav Nasan Zal made, writing his Chidushim. Ach Ata, however, now, Iskenu Levayar, were involved in explaining She'ikar Kol Hatikunim Nasim B'Yerach Ha'Isanim, that the major part of all Tikkunim are accomplished during the month of the powerful, which is Shehu Tishrei, which is the month of Tishrei, which is powerful with holidays. It starts off with Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Yemei Tshuva, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. Most of the month is holidays. Al Yidei Mailas HaKibutz HaKodesh. And these tikkunim are accomplished through the incredible benefit of the holy gathering of the Jews, Shemekashron Atzmon L'Tzadikei Emes, whereby the Jewish people gather together and attach ourselves to the true tzaddikim, Shehem Bechinas Moshe, who are like Moshe Rabbeinu, Bechinas Haroya Ha'amiti, the true shepherd, Hamekaptzam, who gathers Klal Yisrael together. Bechinas, as it says, Moshe Hoya Roya. Moshe Rabbeinu was a shepherd. A shepherd gathers together the sheep. Shezeu Bechinas Rosh Hashanah. This is the concept of the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. Bechinas Tkiyas Shofar, of which the main mitzvah is the blowing of the shofar. Shemekabetz Nidachim. One of the things that the shofar represents is gathering in all those who have wandered away, drifted away. V'chein b'Yom Kippur, Mefaisen Zezeh. And we know that one of the highlights on Yom Kippur is the fact that Jewish people appease each other. We apologize to each other. We repair any damages in friendships, in relationships, kedei sheyeh shalom bein kol Yisrael, in order to establish peace throughout the entire Jewish nation. Shezeh Iker Kiyum HaKibutz. This is the main thing that establishes the gathering of Klal Yisrael. So that there shouldn't be any divisiveness, any opposition, any arguments, any negativity between us. Which destroy the union, the gathering together of all of Klal Yisrael. And this is really what the holiday of Sukkot is all about, which we celebrate after Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Bechinas Sukkos Shalom. It's referred to as Sukkos Shalom, the Sukkah of peace. We make the bracha Hapoirei Sukkos Shalom Oleinu v'al Kol Yisrael. Bechinas Ananei HaKavod. And one of the reasons why we celebrate Sukkot is to commemorate the 7 miracle clouds that traveled with the Jews throughout the time we were in the desert. Sheshom hoyu mikubotzin kol shishim riboy nafshos Yisrael. It's inside these clouds that were gathered together and unified all 600,000 Jewish souls. V'hananei kavod hoyu b'schus Aaron HaKohen. And we know that these miracle clouds accompanied the Jewish people based on the merit of Aharon HaKohen. Shehoya oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. And as it says in Pirkei Avos, that Aaron HaKohen was the person who loved peace and pursued peace. He loved all the people and brought everyone close to Torah. This is the main thing that establishes the holy gathering of Klal Yisrael, when there's peace and unity among us. In order to enable us to be able to draw upon ourselves the holy das, shehu klolius ha'olamos, which brings about a unification and a combining of all the worlds. Shehu bechinas kohen, and we know that our Aharon was the aspect of kohen, as Rav Nosson Zal discussed previously in paragraph 59 of this halacha. And this is what the pasuk says about the holiday of Sukkot. Kol ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu b'sukkos. Every Jewish citizen will sit in the sukkah. L'rameis al klal nafshos Yisrael. This is hinting to us that Sukkot is all about getting together all of the Jewish souls, shemizkatzim letoich sukkos shalom, who gather together into the sukkah of peace. And it's for this reason that all 7 shepherds are invited into the sukkah, and they actually come into the sukkah, because they represent all of the true shepherds of Klal Yisrael, all of the true leaders of Klal Yisrael, shebachol dor, of all generations. Sheheim bechinas, they represent this pasuk that says, kiroya edroi, just like a shepherd who is responsible for his flock, yireh, he pastures his flock, bizroyoi yekabetz tloim, and with his arms he gathers in the sheep. Sheheim oiskim lekabetz kol anidochim. These shepherds, these holy tzaddikim, are involved in gathering in all the Jews who have drifted away. Ulekayim hakibutz ledoros olam, and to establish and perpetuate this gathering of Klal Yisrael for eternal generations, forever. This is what the Gemara says in Sukkah, Kol Yisrael yotzin besukkah achas, that the entire Jewish nation can fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah in one Sukkah. Ki bechinas Sukkah hu bechinas asifa v'kibutz shel Kol Yisrael, because the mitzvah of Sukkah is all about gathering together and bringing together all of Klal Yisrael. The term asifa refers to gathering together people that are sort of close to each other. The term kibbutz refers to gathering people from the furthest places. Regarding Shalom, Sukkot Shalom, Reb Shimshon Ostropolye writes that we know that every mitzvah is all about uniting Hashem and the Shekhinah. And the term Shekhinah is represented by different names of Hashem at different times. One of the names of Hashem that's used to represent the Shekhinah is Hashem's name Aleph Daled Nun Yud, which is Adon. Adon means ruler, Malchus. So Reb Shimshon Ostropolye says that the word Sukkah, we know that the word Sukkah has the letters Samach He on the outside and Chaf Vav on the inside. Samach He, 65, is the numerical value of Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Chaf Vav is the numerical value of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Reb Shimshon Ostropolye writes that if we line up these two names of Hashem, one on top of the other, Yud Kei Vav Kei on top of Aleph Daled Nun Yud, and we do the multiplication, Yud times Aleph, 10 times 1 is 10. Then we take the second letters, Hey times Daled, 5 times 4 is 20. 20 plus 10 is 30. Then we take the Vav of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the letter, and the third letter of Aleph Daled Nun Yud, the Nun. Vav times Nun, 6 times 50 is 300. That's 330. And then we take the last letter of each one, Hey times Yud. 5 times 10 is 50, which together is 380, which is the word Shalom plus the 4 letters. So that again, Sukkah represents Shalom, a union, a bringing together of Yud Kei Vav Kei and Aleph Daled Nun Yud, and a bringing together of all of Klal Yisrael. V'zeh b'chinas vayishma haknani melech harod. And with this, we'll understand what the Torah tells us, that right after Aharon HaKohen passed away, in whose merit we had these clouds that embraced all of Klal Yisrael, when they heard that Aharon passed away, Shehu Amalek. It says Knani, but the Gemara tells us that this was actually the nation of Amalek who dressed up like Knaniim to try to fool the Jewish people, so that the Jewish people would pray to Hashem, save us from Knani. And really, this wasn't Knani, it was Amalek. But the Gemara says that the Jews realized this, and they prayed to Hashem to save them from whatever adversity, whatever enemy they had, and sure enough, they were saved. Shoma Shemeis Aaron. The Torah tells us that they heard that Aaron HaKohen had passed away, V'nistalku Anane Kovoi, and those special holy miracle clouds had left the Jewish people temporarily, because they were with us in the merit of Aaron HaKohen. Ubo lehilochem b'Yisrael. And then Amalek came to attack the Jewish people, as the Gemara discusses in the beginning of Masechta Rosh Hashanah. Ki ikar milchemes Amalek huim hachalushe koyach shebi-Yisrael. Because the main battle that Amalek wages against the Jewish nation is specifically against the weak ones in Klal Yisrael. Shehoyo he'onon poilton, which those special clouds rejected, those that committed acts of pigam bris, who were not included under the protection of the shield of these clouds. Bebechinas, as it says clearly at the end of Parshas Kisavoi, at the end of Parshas Kiseitze, Vayezanev becha kol hanechesholim achrecha, that Amalek went to attack the tail of Klal Yisrael, the nechesholim, the weak ones of Klal Yisrael. As is brought in Medrash Tanchuma, v'hatzadik horoyeh ho'amiti, and the tzaddik, the true shepherd, b'chinas Moshe, loichen b'shvilam, he does battle against Amalek on behalf of these weak souls, lehatzilom b'chinas klipas Amalek, to rescue them, to save them from this tumah of Amalek, v'cheloisov, and his armies, umideoseim horois, and from their evil ideologies, ulahachnisam ulaasvam letoich hakibutz hakodesh. And the truth tzaddik tries to gather in these souls and include them in the holy gathering, hamekubatzim betoicho ananei hakovod, who are gathered in and embraced by the protection of these holy clouds, shehem bechinas sukkah, which are like a sukkah, ukemuva bezoyra kodesh, as is brought in the Zohar Kodesh, shemevi shom parshas vayishma haknani anal le'inyan sukkah. The Zohar Kodesh, when it discusses this topic of Amalek coming to attack the Jewish people at that time, when the clouds had left, the Zohar Kodesh relates it to the mitzvah of Sukkah. Ayin Sham, take a look over there in the Zohar Kodesh. Ki Moshe horoye ho'amiti choizer u'mamshech ho'anane kovoid afilu liachar histalkus Aaron HaKohen. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the true shepherd of Klal Yisrael, he brings back, he's able to restore and bring back those clouds even after Aaron HaKohen passed away. Because the Gemara tells us, Ki be'er onan umon kulam chazru b'schus Moshe. As the Gemara says in Tainus, that originally Hashem gave us those three miracles in the desert, the man, the be'er, the special well that provided water for the whole 40 years, a traveling well that went with Klal Yisrael, and the clouds. Originally, those three were given to Klal Yisrael based on the merit of three tzaddikim. The man was based on the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu, the be'er was based on the merit of Miriam, and the clouds based on the merit, the schus of Aaron HaKohen. And it's brought that when Aaron HaKohen passed away, the clouds left because his merit was gone. But then the Gemara tells us that the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu took over and was strong enough to bring back the clouds. When Miriam Hanaviah passed away, the Be'er left for a short period of time until the power of Moshe Rabbeinu was strong enough to be able to restore that. So we see that all Moshe Rabbeinu was powerful enough to bring us all three of these gifts. And it's interesting to note, the Yontif of Sukkot corresponds to the clouds. What happened to the Mon and the Be'er? The answer is, this is why the main mitzvah that we perform in the Sukkah is the eating in the Sukkah, eating and drinking in the Sukkah also when possible. That's how we include all three items, the clouds and the Mon and the Be'er. V'alkein also oz nechash nechoshes. And this is why the Torah tells us that right after Amalek came and attacked the Jewish people, Moshe Rabbeinu made an image of a snake out of copper. V'hoyo im noshach hanochosh esish, and if a snake would bite any of the Jews, v'hibit el nechash hanachoshes v'chai, the person had only to look at this copper snake that Moshe Rabbeinu had made, and the person became healed. And the Gemara points out in the Masechta Rosh Hashanah, is it the snake that killed or gave life? Chas v'shalom. Ela bizman sheYisrael mistaklim klape maila hayu nisrapim. But rather, when this snake was positioned where to look at it, they had to look upwards. So when the Jews looked upwards towards heaven, towards Hashem, for our salvation, hoyu misrapim, they were healed. Vimlav, and if they didn't look up towards Hashem, hoyu nimoikin, chas v'shalom, the opposite happened. Rav Nosson Zal points out, ze bechinas remozim. This goes back to what we spoke about earlier, the remozim, certain things that the tzaddikim cannot verbalize, that they can't speak about it openly, they can only show hints with their hands or other ways. Remozim, the remozim shebiyam ha'chochma, the remozim and the yadayim shebiyam ha'chochma. That's what this snake represented. K'moshe kosavnu le'el, Rav Nosson Zal says, as I spoke about this previously in paragraph 88 of this halacha, le'inyan, regarding the fact that when Moshe Rabbeinu went out to do battle against Amalek, the Torah says, V'hoyo kasher yorim Moshe yodoi, whenever Moshe Rabbeinu lifted his hands up, the Govar Yisrael, the Jewish people, became stronger in defeating Amalek. And when Moshe Rabbeinu put his hands down, then the battle tide turned against us. Kiheim bechino achas. Because these two episodes, the episode of the snakes coming to bite the Jews, and Moshe Rabbeinu making this snake, copper snake, for the Jews to look at and be healed, and the incident of Amalek coming to attack Klal Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu holding his hands up in tefillah, these two are really one concept. Kamuvon b'Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, as is clearly pointed out in the 3rd chapter of Masechta Rosh Hashanah, in the 8th Mishnah, where it puts these two together. Lahoiros, to teach us shetzrichin hakoil lehistakel klape maila, that everyone has to look upwards towards Hashem. Hainu bechinas remozim shebedasana. This ties into what we learned about earlier. The remozim in the das, certain things that cannot be spelled out, that tzaddikim can't tell it to us clearly, they can only show us hints. Shehem ikar heoras hadas. This is one of the main components of the das of Torah, and the das that tzaddikim give over to Klal Yisrael. Lehizboinein bechol eis, to think deeply all the time, al yedei haremozim hagdoshim shel hadas, through the holy hints that are within the das, within the framework of knowledge. Lehischazek lishoer al amdoi, to be strong and stand our ground even when we're up against the greatest adversity, the greatest adversaries like Amalek or that plague of snakes, to be able to stand our ground and to turn to Hashem, to look heavenwards, upwards. Ki lefa'omim yesh she'ein moyel haremozim shel haromas yodov. Now Rav Nosson Zal explains why these two manners that are expressed here. One is Moshe Rabbeinu lifting up his hands towards heaven to deliver a message to Klal Yisrael. Look to Hashem. Don't put your faith in your fists. Don't put your faith in your army. Don't put your faith in your medical expert. Put your faith in Hashem. And Rav Nosson Zal points out sometimes the remozim of lifting up the hands aren't enough. It doesn't help. And the tzaddik has to make something more than that. As in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, who actually made this snake from copper. What message was Moshe Rabbeinu delivering to Klal Yisrael? He was reminding them of one of the major components of our relationship with Hashem, which is yiras ha'onesh, fear of punishment, consequences. Sha'al yishkechu sheyesh nechoshim srofim, that Klal Yisrael shouldn't forget that there are these poisonous snakes, shehem onshim koshim umorim, which represent painful, severely painful punishments. Alkein, therefore, you better look up. You better look heavenwards and remind yourself that there's a Hashem. Because there's no escape. There's no place to run away to from these severe and bitter punishments, even in this world. How much more so after death? Chas v'shalom. There's no escape then from Gehenna. From Gehenna, the kaf hakela. Kaf hakela means a situation where a person's soul is thrown from one end to the other end. Chas v'shalom. The Gilgulim and reincarnations, v'chulu, etc. Rahman al-Islam, from all the terrible punishments that a person can chas v'shalom have to go through to repair the damage that they did in this world. The only correct response is to look to Hashem, veloses enov lamoroim tomid, and to always lift your eyes upwards to Hashem. B'bchinas, as David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Eilecho nososi es einai, Hashem, to you I lift up my eyes. Ukemay sharoma azlanu admor Rabbeinu Zal, and as Rabbeinu Zal hinted to us in Sichoy Saran, in Rabbi Nachman's wisdom, paragraph 5. The Omar, Rabbeinu Zal said there, she'ikar hu yiras ha'onesh, that the most important thing is fear of punishment. And Rabbeinu Zal said there, af al pi shekosu b'sforim, shetzrichim daiko yiras ha'oimamos, even though there are many sforim that sort of play down the issue of yiras ha'onesh. They say that's for babies, that's for kids. But a Jew, an intelligent Jew, has to strive for yiras ha'oimamos, to have respect for Hashem, not because Hashem's going to beat you up, but because you're in awe of the greatness of Hashem. But Rabbeinu Zal says there, Aval be'emes halavai shenizke lehinotzel mima shetzrichim lehinotzel al yidei yiras ha'onesh. We'd be very lucky and fortunate if we're zoche not to commit sins, not to do all kinds of stupid, crazy, idiotic things, simply because out of fear of being punished for it. That would be very, very good. And Rabbeinu Zal said that we heard also told over in the name of many great tzaddikim, sheho ikar hu yiras ha'onesh, that this yiras ha'onesh is not a silly thing. It's extremely important and critical. V'romas lanu oz heitev. And Rabbeinu Zal hinted us then in a very, very serious way, kamo v'kamo tzrichim lehisyorei v'livchoid miyiras ha'onesh. How much a Jew has to be really scared and frightened of these severe punishments, the variety of severe punishments that the Torah promises, chas v'shon, if people commit certain types of sins, especially if it's done deliberately and repeatedly, Rahman al-Islam. This is the concept of this copper snake which Moshe Rabbeinu made. And Moshe Rabbeinu hinted to Jewish people through this, lehistakel klape maila, to look up heavenward, meaning by fear of being bitten by snakes. That gives you the reality check to stop being silly, to stop allowing yourself to fall into the shtuyot of this world, and to start thinking about Hashem, thinking about your true purpose of life and mission in life. Because these true hints that the tzaddikim give us are very, very important. And this is how Moshe Rabbeinu did battle against Amalek, against the Sitra Achra. Bechinas hatzadik emes, Moshe Rabbeinu, who is the tzaddik emes, this is how he waged the Milchemes Amalek, the battle against Amalek, lahatzil chalushe hakoyach, to rescue those who are weak, so that they should not be pulled away and separated from the holy gathering of the Jews, from being under the protection inside the embrace of the Ananei HaKavod. And this is what the mitzvah of Sukkah is all about. Shehu bechinas Ananei HaKavod. The mitzvah of Sukkah reminds us of these special clouds. Ki inyan hanechash nechoshes nistabev al yidei milchemes Amalek. Because that whole scenario that the Torah presents about these snakes that came to attack Klal Yisrael, and they went running to Moshe Rabbeinu saying, "Save us, help us." And Moshe Rabbeinu made this nechash nechoshes. That whole topic evolved al yidei milchemes Amalek. Kamuvan bepirush Rashi Sham, as Rashi HaKodesh points out over there in the Chumash, where it tells the story about these snakes coming to attack. And again, in Parshas Ekev, on the pasuk Ubnei Yisrael nasu mi be'eros bnei Yakon moisera. Rashi points out shekevon shebo aleim milchama zoi shemilchemes Amalek. When the Jews found themselves suddenly being confronted by Amalek, chazru lachoreihem. They turned back. They retreated. They started running back towards Egypt. Va'oz also Moshe nechash harachoshes. And that's when Moshe Rabbeinu made this copper snake to remind the Jews about Yiras Einish. You're playing with fire when you go against Hashem. Hashem has of all kinds of agents to impose fear on us if we don't impose the fear of Hashem on ourselves. Chas v'shalom.
It seems that we're speaking about Sukkah Shalom, and this is all about telling people how much you should be afraid of Hashem. And he seems to be chiding a bit the Sfarim that tell people, hey, don't focus on your Chet, but rather just focus on the Romamus. That sounds, I've always heard this is a good strategy. And how does that fit in with Sukkah Shalom right now? Because I find there's a lot of resistance to this as well. Maybe the Rav can speak about it.
My Rebbe, Rav Rosenfeld, spoke about this 50 years ago and 60 years ago. He said, during his time, he said, we're starting to see the incredible destructive damage effects of unwarranted, the wrong type of liberalism, how it just perpetuates criminals. You have repeated criminals, and people, if people know that if there isn't the deterrent of punishment, then you'll watch those crime rates climb. You'll watch people, stretch things to the limit, and they'll go as far as they can to do as much as they can get away with, that kind of thing. He spoke about it during his time, regarding the courts and that kind of stuff, and also regarding the education system. Those great philosophers and the great minds that instituted a new form of education where there's no such thing as punishment, and there's no, we punish the teachers, not the students. The teachers have to be afraid that the students could show up with knives and guns, and we don't want to. The last thing in the world is we want for students to have fear. I mean, fear is a terrible thing. The fact that the teachers have to be in fear of getting knifed and stabbed, that's less critical, less significant. He pointed it out at that time, and we see, unfortunately, a generations of wimps in many cases, kids who are spoiled, kids who don't know what responsibility is, kids who don't know what it is to earn something, to deserve something, to merit something, because they get everything for free, or they're begged. In many cases, the parents beg the kids to listen to them, or to join them, or to talk to them. Kids, parents want to hear something. Kids don't talk. They're not talking to the parent. That kind of stuff. All of this kind of stuff, and a major part of this disease was initiated and perpetuated by the fact that this was taken out of religion and out of life. This concept of Yiras Einish, whereas the Torah teaches us that there are three basic levels. There's Yiras Einish, there's Ahava, and then there's Yiras Horoimamus. And all three are necessary. All three are critical. If you leave out any of the three, it won't work. We see it today. You see there's a speed limit for driving, and if there are no cameras, and if there's no police, and if people don't know that they're going to get a ticket, they're going to get 1,000 shekel fine, we see that a good 90% at least of the people will ignore the speed limits and all of these, and any kind of things like that, any boundaries, that kind of thing. So Rabbeinu Zal wanted to set the record straight. This Yiras Einish was put in the Torah for a reason. Now, we know that the Torah emphasizes Smoil Doiche Yemin Mekarev, that it's with the weaker hand, the left hand, that we push away. With the right hand, we bring close. With the stronger hand, we bring close. Rab Nosson Zal, during his time, 200 years ago said that for every spoon of reprimand, you need a whole pitcher of encouragement. When you're reprimanding children or students, you're going to want to reprimand. For a spoon of reprimand, you need full pitcher of encouragement, because the generations have become so weak and so bad. But for anybody to dare to go up against Hashem and go up against the Torah and just erase this, make believe it's not there, or think we're going to do better by leaving this out completely, by not including this component at all in educating our kids or ourselves, we're going to see how well it works. We're going to see that again, there's 1 in 500 kids, let's say, that are naturally good, sort of, that it comes naturally to them when they have to choose the right thing over the wrong thing. But unfortunately, in the world that we live in today, that's not the usual, that's not the norm. That when people are left to their own devices without any element of consequences, they don't make the right choices in many cases, unfortunately. When Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people on Har Sinai, thunder, lightning, Steven Spielberg plus, what was that all about? What was Hashem trying to prove? He was trying to make it perfectly clear up front. I love you, choo-choo moochoo, we love each other, we're best friends. I'm your mommy and I'm your daddy and everything. And I also have this Magnum. I also have this 44 Magnum. Don't play. Don't step on don't test me, chas v'shalom, because there's very, very severe consequences. And Moshe Rabbeinu, in summarizing Matan Torah, he writes that why did Hashem do all of this? He writes there, the pasuk says there, I think it's in Bishalach. No, I'm sorry, in Yisrael. Leman nasois eschem, in order to elevate you, to lift you up, uleman tihye yirosoi al penechem levilti techto, and so that you will have fear of Hashem upon yourselves, so that you won't sin. Many commentaries ask, what do you mean? The Jews said Nasev and Ishma. They already said, we accept. Why does the Gemara say Hashem took Mount Sinai, he lifted it up, and he put it over their head as like a cone, an upside down cone, and he said, if you accept the Torah, good, and if not, you're going to be buried here. What's that all about? The answer is it's about that's a critical piece of education in the United States. For about 200 years, approximately, most Americans were living relatively peacefully, knowing that they were living in a sort of normal kind of country. It wasn't the jungle. It wasn't the complete jungle. Recently, with what's happened the past year or so, all barriers were taken down. No fear. The minute that element was taken away, we see a little bit. We haven't seen everything yet. We see that the United States of America is in the process of being dismantled by this hefkerus. When people can feel they can take over a police station and they can take over, when there's no fear of consequences. And people aren't afraid every single day to go out there with mask, no mask, yes mask, no, to say, we hate your gut, drop dead. But today, every single day, when they threaten to kill, and they don't threaten, they say, we can't wait till somebody, it's escalating, it's continuing, it's not getting smaller, unfortunately.
People are resistant to it. They don't want to hear punishments, it's bad. There's a huge resistance to it, right?
That's part of the insanity. Remember, we spoke in recent years, we mentioned a few times that the Yetzer Hara makes a person crazy. Rav Nasan Zal quoted Rabbi Nachman's words, Meshuga Mamish. This is one of the important aspects of the insanity in the world today, that generations have been raised where it's taboo to say punish or to say cancel. We don't say that. We don't do those things, and we don't even say those things. The Torah says, Kabed esavicha vesimecha. And the Gemara says, what does kabed mean? It means bring him a glass of water, bring him this. And it says, ish imay va'aviv tira'u, that a person should respect. Tiro means respect, and tiro means afraid to sit in daddy's seat. afraid to interrupt daddy when he's talking, afraid of fear and respect. It's not, it's a combination again. It's oynish and roimamus. It's a combination.
So what can we say to help others be mikabel?
When you want to re-educate somebody, there's a way to do that also. You can't necessarily change the whole world. You can't change a person in 1 minute. It's a process. It's a process which requires education, and it's got to be done the right way, the way that education needs to be done. Gradually, slowly, stories, the way that the Torah teaches us to teach. And again, smoil doicha yamin mekarev. We said that there's two hands working at the same time, with the right hand bringing close, with the left hand bringing far. The concept of a rabbi and a student, the Gemara says a student who calls his rabbi by his name is chayev misa. Well, what are we talking about? He didn't kill anybody. He just said Joe. He just said Chaim. It's major. The Torah stresses that the two hands, the right hand is ahava, the left hand is yira, and creation requires both hands, and both shleimus is only when you have both of these together. Before we do a mitzvah, we say bedechilu urechimu, with fear and love, always emphasizing both of those things. Rabbeinu Zal quotes the Zohar Kodesh, which says that shleimus is dependent on yira. We say it every day. We say it in Birchas Hamazon, ki ein machzor lireov. There is nothing lacking. There's nothing missing from those who fear Hashem. And the Zohar Kodesh says, ba'asar de'is dechilu is shleimus. Where there is fear, there is shleimus. Again, making it perfectly clear that this is a critical piece, component. We know that when a person wants to develop muscles and everything, resistance, you need resistance. You need the left and the right, always. And the left comes first, the yira comes first. A child, when a child is small, very small, and a child reaches out to touch fire or to touch something else that's dangerous, or a child runs out into the street, where there are cars, that kind of thing. If that child isn't given an education, if that child isn't shown that that's life-threatening, that's dangerous, sometimes the child, if you tell the child, come here, please come here, sometimes the child will listen and sometimes they won't. And sometimes there'll be a funeral because the person wasn't given that benefit of that aspect of yira, knowing that even if it's something you want to do, you won't do it because you know that crossing a certain line, bang, there's consequence, there's major consequence. Chas v'shalom. One of the things Rabbeinu Zal mentions there is Yira Shamayim. And he asked me, what is Yira Shamayim? And I mentioned to him that all the Sfarim, all the Sifrei Musar have a major chapter on that. And the Sefer Reishis Chachma, which is one of the Sfarim that Rabbeinu Zal complimented tremendously. He said he himself learned this Sefer countless times because it was so valuable. It's a Sefer that was written by a student of Reb Moshe Cordovero, Reishis Chachma, which has chapters on every critical topic, in Avodas Hashem. And the first chapter naturally is called Shar Hayira, where he collects from all the different sources in the Gemara, in Tanakh, in the Zohar Kodesh, and all kinds of other places, showing us how important, how special this ingredient is in building a person, in making a person into a real quality Jew.
Rabbi,
I was in shul yesterday on Shabbos, and sure enough, I walk into shul, and right where I sit, there's a sefer on the table. First time ever I've seen this sefer, and it's called Kitzer Reishis Chachma. It seems that this sefer was so important that there were a few great rabbis that decided to write a shortened version of it, to make it a little easier to get into. And I thought right away, wow, I have to get this for my grandson. We were talking about this sefer, and I remember that it's not an easy sefer because it's quoting from Gemaras all over and from the Zohar Kodesh, beautiful things. But again, the rabbis thought it important enough to write a kitzur of that sefer to make it more accessible and more available for people.
So what did you tell your grandson, Al Regalachas?
It's going to take more than regalachas to explain, but I told him it means respect for Hashem. It means the issue of boundaries, and that one of the main areas where we see the Yira Shamayim of a person is when it comes to tefillah. The pasuk says, "Isha Yiras Hashem hi tishalo." Learning, when it comes to knowledge, it's something that's usually respected, and people are more naturally drawn to that. To hear something new, something that I didn't know, something interesting. People don't mind that as much as when you tell a person that they have to talk to Hashem, thank Hashem, talk to Hashem, ask Hashem. People have a much more natural aversion to that. That comes much more difficult. And that requires Yira Shamayim. That requires respect. It requires faith in Hashem, and it requires respect for Hashem. That even if I don't enjoy this right away, or I don't enjoy this completely, it has nothing to do with enjoyment. Hashem is a king, and a king demands certain respect. There's certain respect that's a must there. And therefore, if it's a little more difficult, if it means getting out of bed, it means getting out of bed earlier, this, that. I just talking a few right before the shir, at about 9:15, I was talking to a close friend, and one of his children, who's 19 years old, religious boy, raised religious his whole life, and likes to go to Kivrei Tzadikim and many, many other good things, but has difficulty getting out of bed in the morning. And most definitely one major element of that is not afraid of Hashem, not afraid of consequence. That the king, you have a meeting with the king, and the meeting, there's hours, the king has hours when he's available. There's a Zman Kriya Shema, there's a Zman Tefillah, it isn't just chuchu-muchu that I was a little tired, or I could, the bed was comfortable. If a person doesn't have this element of Yira, that it turns them into a weakling, much, much weaker than if a person does have this element all in addition to the other qualities.
The whole business about the snakes, I was reminded of the Gemara about Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and his encounter with the snake there, in which he concludes by saying, it's not the snake that kills, it's the sin that kills.
The statement, woe is to the person who meets up with a snake, and woe is to the snake that meets up with Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Because again, a tzaddik who has real Yiras Hashem, Yiras Shamayim, the animals are afraid of them. This is something that's pointed out very clearly in the Gemara and other places, that when a person appears like a human being, animals respect a human being. When an animal attacks a human being, it's because it does not see a human being. It sees an animal. It sees a person who's lacking the qualifications that qualify a person to being considered an Adam HaSholem. And one element is definitely this element of Yira Dikdusha, holy Yira, healthy Yira.
But there the snake wasn't afraid of Rabbi Chanina. He bit him, and that's what killed him.
And died. The snake died, not Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa.
But only after he bit Rabbi Chanina.
Exactly. That was to show the world that, look, snake bites Rabbi Chanina, and the snake dies in the process. And Rabbi Chanina doesn't get harmed in any way by it.
And when Reb Natan is talking about giving us examples, he's giving us examples with Amalek and Moshe Rabbeinu holding his hands up, and the snake, and making a copper snake. It seems to me like the most important thing would be for Moshe Rabbeinu to stand up on a pedestal and start giving a drasha. But it doesn't. The hints shouldn't have such an impact. Why are we giving hints?
One of the main themes throughout this whole halacha was that the hints are a higher level than the drasha. That many times there are things that need to be said and can be said, and there are certain things that are even more important than that cannot be said. And it can only be communicated through Ramazim Shabiyam HaChachma. That's been a theme throughout this whole halacha, and now Rav Nosson Zal is closing with this, showing us these two clear examples in the Torah. What you're saying emphasizes this point, that Moshe Rabbeinu had given many speeches. He spoke to the Yid many times about tefillah, but they needed to see Moshe Rabbeinu standing up there like this. They needed to see this, and to be able to get a certain message that could only be gotten from that. And they needed to see that copper snake to deliver a certain message that could only be conveyed through that.
Concerning the lawlessness that's going on in America now, but looking into it deeper, all those people who are attacking the police stations, as I understand it, one of the things on their minds is that the big corporations and the big banks are totally ignoring the laws and violating the laws with total impunity, but they have enough money that they can buy law enforcement officials to let them ignore the laws. So they say, why should we pay attention to the laws? They don't pay attention to them.
Also true. It's all the same thing. It's good. You just said it yourself, impunity. When there's no fear of punishment, leman yishmu v'yero v'lo yizidno. The Torah says that one of the main reasons for punishment is so that people should see and hear, and they will not go ahead and deliberately repeat that offense. We should be zeicha to appreciate the methodology of Hashem, not these other methodologies, and to pray hard, to absorb it correctly, and to know exactly when and how to apply it to our children, to our families, to people that we interact with.
How do we apply this year in this Chol HaMoed?
The Gemara says, "Hamevaze es hamoyadois," a person who shows disrespect to Chol HaMoed is chayiv misa. And the Shulchan Aruch says one example of that is dressing holiday-wise. And here again, I remember growing up as a kid that this is one of the things you saw, that in the very religious world, in the Haredi world, I'm talking about it in America even, not Israel. People knew that on Chol HaMoed they came to shul, with a suit, a tie, a hat, dressed formally. And then other schools of thought, which again studied these other ideologies, they wanted to have a less formal relationship with Hashem, sort of. So it started out on Yom Tov. Most people didn't have the chutzpah to come into shul in casual dress, but Chol HaMoed, they took off the barriers. There was no, don't need a jacket, don't need a formal shidduch, to be a little more informal with Hashem. And then it went further to the point where other people have taken it further, that now even on Shabbos and Yom Tov, again, we don't have to be so formal about religion. If I were going to meet a president or a big football star, I'd dress up for the occasion. But Hashem, religion isn't that serious. It's not, I don't have to get I'm not so impressed that I have to dress up for it. I can wear my moccasins to shul. I don't have to put on socks. Can dress very casual to go see Hashem. When the Torah makes it perfectly clear that's not the case. It's not the case. That Hashem is a father and a king, and there's a certain element of respect that's necessary for us. He doesn't need it. We need it. We need it for us to be successful human beings. To be a mensch means knowing when to be formal, when you can be less formal, when more respectful, when less respectful. These are examples, some of the examples.
Rav Nasan.
Yes.
Rav Nasan, in a sense, the blueprint of human being is one of them that the person has Yirah Shamayim. It's one of the parts of emotions of human being. So, in a sense, the person has a choice, freedom of choice, or to have true fear of Hashem, or to have the fear of fallen fears. So that people don't realize it. They think like, oh, why do I have to fear this and this? It's so negative. But in truth, the person all the time fears all different things and just doesn't realize it, why he acts it, because it's false fear. So
we didn't speak about that right now, but that's a major topic in Rabbeinu Zal's writings, that the fear is going to be there. If a person chooses to apply it, to get educated about fear of Hashem and fear of Torah, of religion, then they have a healthy fear. That's a fear that increases and improves a person's life. If they choose to ignore that or to reject that, they'll have different fear. They'll have anxieties and phobias and other things for which people end up taking drugs and all the negative effects, that come from, again, choosing the wrong fear. Whether they made a mental choice or they simply chose to reject fear of Hashem and unknowingly got stuck with all those other fears and anxieties and fears and phobias and things that shorten a person's life and weaken a person, Rahman al-Islam. Definitely, very important point. Wishing everybody a happy Yontif. Remember, there's a pasuk, Vegilu birada, rejoice with trembling. It's not a contradiction. When a person's in fear mode, they can be happy also. It doesn't mean unhappy, sad, depressed. Person can be tremendous simcha, but with boundaries. There are some people that when they're happy, they have to break windows, they have to hurt people, they have to say ugly things. A Jew knows that a person can be wholly happy, super happy, and yet not harming anyone else, not harming myself, not saying anything ugly or doing anything ugly. Chas v'shem. All the best.
Thanks so much, Nasan. Appreciate it.
A good moed, Rav Nasan. Thank you so much.
Good
Thank you
morning,
very much.
Kulam.
Thanks, Rav Nasan.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Nasan. Baruch Hashem, v'zoicha again to Shir, and especially the Chalamoid. Thank you. Good morning to everybody.
Rav Nasan, good morning.